If we do not learn from history, we are condemned to repeat it.
Well, apparently that image of Russia as an aggressor within Europe's gone to some. An Estonian defence firm, now we can report, has developed a mobile bunker that can withstand artillery shelling and extreme temperatures. It can house 12 people and costs €18,000. As for its efficiency, well, it was tested by NATO specialists, apparently, against a range of weapons. That as the alliance continues its drills in Estonia, simultaneously with massive war games in Nordic states, too.
Russia says it reserves the right to deploy nuclear weapons to any part of its territory, including the Crimean Peninsula, if it feels necessary. The director of the Department for Non-Proliferation and Arms Control at the Foreign Ministry, Mikhail Ulyanov, made those comments in reaction to Ukraine's foreign minister, who told a NATO summit in May that Russia is sending nuclear arms to Crimea, and that would be a grave breach of international norms. Pavlo Klimkin also urged Ukraine's Western partners to react decisively in case Moscow decided to move its nuclear warheads. Russia's defense ministry has already announced plans to dispatch Tu-22M3 long-range bombers capable of delivering nuclear weapons to any SNAP military exercises. However, it is not clear if it would equip the aircraft fleet with nuclear arms. Fighting continues in eastern Ukraine despite the ceasefire between Kiev and pro-Russian militias. Militia sources say the Ukrainian army has carried out at least 28 attacks on the territory of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic since Sunday.
This part of Gorlovka, there is no military units anywhere around. This is totally a civilian area. 3 days ago, early in the morning, the Ukrainian Nazi army, in a random attack, sent heavy artillery bombs into the Tuv family home. Yura, the father, was killed. Katya, the 11-year-old daughter, was killed. Anna, the mother, is in the hospital. She lost her right arm. Her son Zahar, 6 years old, also wounded in the hospital. Her little infant baby, also with her in the hospital.
Dozens were killed in clashes with the Kiev army in the small town of Malinka on Wednesday. Mourners laid flowers and militiamen gave speeches in memory of those who died. Both sides accuse each other of relaunching attacks and insist they were only retaliating.
In the eastern Ukrainian town of Marinka, army convoys now patrol the streets where landmarks bear fresh scars from the latest violence. A surge in fighting there between the army and pro-Russian rebels has not only put troops on high alert, it has sparked new tensions at the United Nations. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power.
Yet Russia and the separatists it trains, arms, fights alongside, and with whom it shares command and control systems in eastern Ukraine, continues to ignore this consensus, flouting the commitments it made at Minsk.
The recent fighting in the Donbass region has gone far beyond the regular low-level skirmishes that have flared since the ceasefire began in February. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe blames both sides, saying Kiev's forces and the rebels are putting civilians at risk. Russia's UN ambassador Vitaly Churkin says a critical moment has come, and it's up to Ukraine to keep the peace.
If we allow Kiev to continue to not implement the absolutely necessary measures with regards to Donbass, the situation could fall out of control with unpredictable consequences.
Ukraine's president is warning about a full-scale Russian invasion of his country. Fighting in eastern Ukraine claimed more than 20 lives this week. Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to deny his military is involved in the conflict.
So over the next 2 days, in Schloss Elmo. We're going to discuss our shared future, a global economy that creates jobs and opportunity, maintaining a strong and prosperous European Union, forging new trade partnerships across the Atlantic, standing up to Russian aggression in Ukraine.
Canada will not, and the world must not, turn a blind eye to the near daily attacks that are killing and wounding Ukrainians here on their own soil.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says the country will increase the size of its nuclear arsenal in 2015 by more than 40 intercontinental missiles. Putin made the remarks at the opening of an arms show in the capital, Moscow. The Russian president vowed to continue a big arms modernization program despite the nation's economic downturn.
This year, our nuclear forces will receive more than 40 intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of penetrating all existing missile defenses, even the most advanced.
The alliance is well aware of our shifting security situation and has taken a number of steps that we talked about in Wales last year, and this kind of exercise is exactly what our senior leaders asked us in Wales to accomplish, to make sure that our alliance is ready for the new security situation.
We are responding, and we have to respond because we see a Russia which is more assertive and which is responsible for aggressive actions, especially in Ukraine.
Seated in front of an audience of business people, political leaders, and journalists, the Russian president blamed the West for the conflict in Ukraine.
And help us understand, as you see it, where are we? How do we get there? And where do we go from here?
Ships, planes and hundreds of Marines attacked the beachfront off the Baltic Sea this week in an impressive show of force during part of Baltops 2015, a US-led multinational maritime exercise now in its 43rd year. A huge undertaking, this year's exercise was particularly impressive in its scope and ambition.
Baltops is all about alliance unity, alliance solidarity, alliance security, and security of the Baltic region. So the alliance has come together with 14 alliance members and 3 alliance partners in a special relationship here with a huge flotilla of forces at sea to conduct a full spectrum of operations from air defense, mine countermeasures, anti-submarine warfare operations, and amphibious landings. And I think that shows a very strong message of resolve.
The Pentagon is revealing a major move this morning in response to Russia's aggression. The Secretary of Defense tells CBS News the United States is sending heavy combat equipment into Eastern Europe. It is the Pentagon's most significant move in the region since the end of the Cold War.
American rotational forces need to move more quickly and easily to participate in training and exercises here. That's why I'm pleased to announce, and I discussed with my colleagues earlier today, that we will temporarily stage 1 Armored Brigade Combat Team's vehicles and associated equipment in countries in Central and Eastern Europe.
Today, Defense Secretary Ashton Carter said the U.S. will station weapons across 6 former Soviet bloc nations to counter threats from Russia. That hasn't happened since the Cold War. Russia's been expanding its reach, annexing Crimea and supporting rebels in Ukraine.
In response to Russia's ongoing proxy war in Ukraine, 3 Baltic states and 3 Eastern European countries will receive 250 tanks, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, and self-propelled howitzers.
These are a response to Russia's provocations.
We learned today that the breach of federal computers was much bigger than we were told. 18 million current and former federal employees may have had their private information hacked. The Chinese are the leading suspects. Major Garrett tells us that lawmakers went looking for answers today, but got few.
If there's anyone to blame, it is the perpetrators.
Director of the Office of Personnel Management, Kathy Archuleta, told Congress today no one in the U.S. government is responsible for the data breach. Despite 7 separate reports from as far back as 2009 warning the agency of massive cyber vulnerabilities. A watchdog report out last Wednesday said a new system in place to detect these attacks is also insufficient. It read in part, "There is a high risk that this project will fail." Hackers stole personal information to build surveillance files on possible targets for blackmail and threats. One example, intelligence agents posted overseas. Sean Henry is a former FBI assistant director.
They've got a full network. They know who their friends and relatives are. They know where the towns they grew up in. They know the names of their pets. And they oftentimes know the deepest, darkest secrets.
The breach impacts current, former, and prospective federal employees and any family member or friend who showed up on a security clearance form.
You find a lot of information out on people that they don't necessarily want their friends to know. They certainly don't want their enemies to know.
Minister Harper is on his way to Ukraine tonight ahead of a weekend summit of G7 leaders in Germany. What was the G8 is now the G7. Russia was excluded after it annexed Crimea from Ukraine last year. And before he left today, Harper sent a parting shot to the Russian president. He told the Associated Press that Canada would very, very strongly oppose Putin ever sitting around the G7 table again. Our chief political correspondent Tom Clark had a chance to sit down today with Russia's ambassador to Canada. Tom, how did he react to Russia being shunned from the G7?
Well, Donna, he didn't say anything that's likely to get Russia readmitted into the group anytime soon. He's accused the West of being stuck in the 90s. He said that it's like 1992 all over again, and we have completely ignored the fact that China and India and Russia are now the equals of the West. He also said that there has to be negotiations between Russia and the West, and specifically Canada. He wants them to start immediately. He said it's the only way, and get this, the only way to avoid World War III.
Bye-bye. See you soon.